Well, we have thousands of validators on the Solana network, and our focus tends to be on the creation of blocks. But that would be maybe the data plane operation of the network, so how exactly do we handle other pieces of information like the metadata, the components that make it so this network can communicate with one another? We need lots and lots of communication to be happening among all of the different validators in the network, and it can't just all be about creating blocks. So how do we share that key amount of information? Well, that is going to be thanks to a protocol known as GOSSIP. GOSSIP is going to, again, propagate that metadata that is still critical to network operation, even though it doesn't directly produce blocks. So the responsibility of GOSSIP is not to actually create blocks, but it is to enable the creation of blocks through the various communications mechanisms. Now, all validators are going to participate in GOSSIP. It's going to run on UDP port 8001 by default, although validators can change this. And it's going to run every 100 milliseconds. So about 10 times a second, we're going to be sending a GOSSIP message from our validator to the rest of the network. Now, the data, again, that metadata that we're learning from GOSSIP and from all the other validators in the network, we're going to be storing that in a table. Now, this table has a fancy name. It's called the Cluster Replicated Data Store, or CRDS, and we usually refer to that as the CRDS table, or every now and again we might just want to call it the GOSSIP table. This is stored locally on every validator in the network. So how exactly do we learn about this information? I mean, where are we getting the metadata to store inside of this table? Well, we're about to jump into that, but before we do, if this content is helpful, please give it a like, share, and repost it, and say, stake some SOL on Lake Stake. We are grateful for every last Lamport. So, talking about these, how we learn about the information, we're going to be sending messages to one another using GOSSIP. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use one of 4 different message types in order to do that. The first message type is known as a push. The push is going to be used when we have new information to share with everyone else. We want to share this out with the rest of the Solana network. And so we're going to share it with a group of peers known as our push peers. Our validators are going to decide who the push peers are in the network randomly, but then that list is going to be maintained over the course of time, so we're not selecting an entirely new set of push peers every single time we want to send a message. Again, we're sending messages every 100 milliseconds. This is happening pretty often. And so we're going to push, as this icon sort of indicates, push these messages out to all of our push peers, and then the validator that receives one of these push messages is going to store that information inside of the CRDS table down here, and then it will also push that information out to its own push peers. This is how information gets propagated throughout the entire network. When there's new information to share, it's going to get spread around very, very quickly thanks to GOSSIP. Now we also have a pull message type, push and pull. The pull message is when a validator suspects that it is missing information. Maybe it's been a while since it got a push message. And so the idea here is to send a pull or a request to a push peer. It's going to pick one of its push peers at random, and it's going to send it the pull request along with what we call a Bloom filter, or a data structure that essentially describes all of the pieces of information that we already have. And so when this one peer takes a look at this and says, all right, it looks like you are actually missing a piece of information, well, then we would send that piece of information back via a pull response. Those are going to be the 2 primary message types that help to propagate information and to discover information thanks to GOSSIP. But we do have a couple of other message types. We also have a prune message type. This would be in the case when somebody doesn't want to be push peers with somebody else. So maybe I actually received a message. I'm a validator. I received a push message from a downstream validator, and I don't want to be receiving push messages from that validator for one reason or another. So I simply send a prune message to say, hey, I want you to cut me off. I don't want to be part of this set of push peers that you're maintaining, and the validator will comply and remove that validator from the table. We also have ping and pong messages. So anyone with networking experience will recognize this concept of pinging. It's when we send a message, a very lightweight message, just to see if somebody's out there. And the pong is what we refer to as the response, maybe an echo reply, if we want to think about things from a technical perspective. But the idea is that I'm going to find out, hey, is this device still out there? I'm going to ping it and hopefully get a pong back. And now I know that this validator is up and online. So all of these messages are great, but what exactly are we trying to accomplish here? I mean, what are these records that we're actually storing? Well, gossip records are going to be exchanged again using the push messages, and there are about 10 record types. And without going into all of them, we can list a few of them out. For example, a lot of what we want to track is simply the other validators that are out there. So we want to know, for example, what are the IP addresses of the validators? What ports are they using for gossip communication if they're not using the default 8001? We can also check for the version of Solana that the validators are running. We can check their identity, pub key, and all kinds of things. And if we just want to see some of the records that exist, go to the Solana CLI and run this great Solana GOSSIP command. And Solana GOSSIP will give a lot of this information and even more information than just this to list out all of the different nodes that are out there. This is how information gets propagated throughout the Solana network, which ultimately does enable the creation of blocks, even though it doesn't directly contribute to it. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, and always remember to stake at the lake.